The unpalatable truth is that the EU is more bigoted than Trump's America. This week has seen worldwide outrage against President Donald Trump and his temporary ban on people entering the United States from 7 mostly Muslim countries. There have been demonstrations across the globe, and a petition here trying to stop the president's state visit to the UK has been signed more than 1.8 million times. As an observer of international politics for many decades, I believe that Trump's move to ban certain Muslims from traveling to the US is inept, morally wrong and, above all, a propaganda gift to violent Islamic organizations such as ISIS and Al-Qaeda. That said, I am utterly appalled by the behavior of many of those who are condemning Trump. Most egregious is the hypocrisy of the leaders of many EU countries, including Angela Merkel and her cheerleaders among the British liberal elite. Their hypocrisy turns my stomach. For the truth is that their anger over the new president's ban is outrageously two-faced. Let me spell out the facts. Many European politicians treat migrants, and, in particular, Muslims, more disgracefully than they are being dealt with by Trump. For example, Hungary's Prime Minister, Viktor Orban, wants to build a massive fence to stop refugees crossing into his country from the east. He calls migrants a poison that Hungary won't swallow. Why hasn't he been subjected to the kind of chorus of opprobrium from those European liberals who greeted Trump's move to tighten America's borders? Why have fellow EU leaders not shunned Orban as a racist and a xenophobe? Instead, he is seen as a valued colleague and friend. His Fidesz party is in the same political grouping in the European Parliament as Mrs. Merkel's Christian Democrats. They work together at European summits, planning a common strategy. Yet this man is much more bigoted than Trump. But do we ever hear talk of banning Orban from traveling to Brussels? Was there a whisper of dissent when he visited London in November to see Theresa May? Does Nick Clegg make strident Commons speeches about the pernicious Hungarian? Of course not. The objectionable Orban is not alone. The Prime Minister of neighboring Slovakia, Robert Fico, said last year that Islam had no place in his country. He speaks of the need to monitor every Muslim and won't let a single Muslim refugee enter his country. With other chilling views, such as describing journalists as dirty, anti-Slovak prostitutes, he almost makes Trump sound like an Islington lefty. Again, where are the denunciations of this man, who has the gall to call himself a social democrat, from Mrs. Merkel, Labour's Yvette Cooper, who this week urged the government to have the guts to speak out over Trump's immigration ban, the Liberal Left or the Guardian newspaper? I have searched hard and I can't find evidence that European leaders have ever criticized Prime Minister Fico, whose country took its turn last year to assume the EU presidency. As for Jeremy Corbyn, despite saying he is not concerned about numbers of migrants, he, along with his fellow socialist, President François Hollande of France, is a member of the same European political group as the virulently anti-immigration Slovakian Prime Minister. Incidentally, Hollande's criticism of Trump has been ferocious, while Corbyn has joined the clamor for Trump's state visit to Britain to be cancelled. Yesterday, I scoured the internet for any condemnation by either Hollande or Corbyn of their bigoted fellow European Socialist Party leader. I couldn't find even a veiled criticism of an inflammatory man who has vowed to stop Muslims destroying the cultural identity of Europe. It is very plain that a double standard is operating. Whereas bigotry from European leaders is tolerated, Trump is demonized for fulfilling his campaign promises. True, like many, I worry deeply that Trump may make the world a much less tolerant place. But the intolerance which motivates him is at work in the European Union. And not just on the fringes. The truth is that it has contaminated countries which have had proud histories of liberalism. For example, it seems that the anti-Islam Freedom Party, led by Geert Wilders, an overt and dangerous racist, will win most seats in the election in Holland next month. Although unlikely to take power, his party will become kingmaker. And in April, Marine Le Pen, leader of the ferociously anti-migrant Front National and whose father was convicted over racial hatred, xenophobia and anti-Semitism, has an increasingly strong chance of becoming president of France. This widespread and odious hostility to migrants in mainland Europe is one of the main reasons, along with the EU's economic failure, why I voted Leave in last year's referendum. That decision has been vindicated by the shameless double standards of many European leaders. They endeavor to make themselves look good by expressing anger about Trump. But they are hypocrites. Meanwhile, there's been a great deal of idle talk in some sections of the British media about the rise of fascism in the US that may be a genuine worry. But the truth is that the rise of fascism is a far bigger threat across today's continental Europe than in America, in large part because, sadly, it is in the DNA of so many European countries.